Is diversity dead? Long live diversity. I'm going to give a little bit of an intro to our speakers, and then I'm going to give a little bit of an intro to the session. We have Bud Johnston, who I actually have met here at Soho House and an event that he does for Diversity Leader. Bud Johnston is incredibly active in the diversity in the community here in Brighton. He's the founder of BOXLESS, a social and environmental strategy consultancy, where also for our students, Mika works at BOXLESS with Bud, and this is very important because many of our students have been on the receiving end of Mika's teaching for B Corps. Bud leads on DEI, supporting organizations to be forces for positive change. Through co-founding grassroots community organization, he has been creating positive spaces for marginalized communities, which is going to be incredibly interesting and enriching for us to hear today. He sits on many diversity advisory boards, including in our university. Is that correct?
Yes, and here, ironically, as well.
And the Soho House, absolutely. So wonderful. Yeah. Thank you very much, Bud. A round of applause. Let's give some energy from Then we also have Kevan Smith, who has very kindly accepted our invitation. He's the director of Epiphany Content. He's a professional filmmaker. He's a video branding specialist with a background in the film and television industry. After studying at the London Film Academy, he adapted his experience working on major film and television productions to create high-end personal branding content for SMEs and entrepreneurs. He has the benefit of leveraging diverse perspectives to foster innovation and growth. And I have, he's just been speaking at the TED Brighton, and he's developing a concept of human alchemy. And if you look at his website, I don't know what human alchemy is, but you can understand what it is because it's about creating an alignment about many things that rotate around the human. And being the head of the MBA, and seeing so many people coming in and changing during the year professionally and finding that alignment that we really strive to create that space for that alignment to happen within the MBA. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us, and also please a round of applause for Great. So, diversity is dead. So we've seen our friend Donald. Gosh. So, you know, the beautiful thing about this audience is that we are all so diverse, one from the other. We all have come from very different backgrounds. And in some shape or form, some ruling classes or some people that have quite a lot of power at the moment operate in very narrow spaces of supremacies, where there is a certain level of very narrow space of existence, or development of the self and of acceptance of what is, the right thing to do. And Donald Trump has been signing executive orders to remove DEI from universities, from many federal professions, and he has definitely moved it off the agenda, but he's definitely done something that we've seen done in very authoritative and totalitarian states before, which is removing language. And if you have read Orwell 1984, you know what I'm talking about, right? So removal of language is really a way of manipulating reality, and so this is manipulating reality and narrowing it down. So this is a really important moment to become aware of the importance of diversity. I want to say here, I teach diversity, and there is not, the diversity framework is under attack, from the supremacists, of course, but it's also under attack from ourselves as well, because we wonder whether diversity, often in organization diversity is a tick box exercise. So whilst it preaches well, it doesn't achieve much. Or maybe it can create backlashes. So it's an incredibly complex area in which to operate. People who are strong activists, anti-racist activists, say that diversity is, diverse washing, allows companies to get away with things just by ticking boxes and say, oh, I've done it, but nothing changes. So it is a contested space. It's a contested space under attack from supremacists. It's a contested space under attack from people that don't feel they can ever be represented. And also, it's a space that is getting more and more of a political nuance. You know, I'm Italian-Palestinian, so being Palestinian right now is a very, very, very difficult moment for this. And, a lot of attacks on diversity in the US happen precisely to people who are pro-Palestinians. So there is a lot at stake for me as well, personally, in this conversation. So, I tell you I can speak a lot, so I need to stop. So the first thing that I would like to say is actually, and I'm going to start with Bud, but then I'm going to start with you for the next question. So, what is diversity for you? How would you define it? Let's go back a little bit to the drawing board. And from your perspective, from your experience, what is diversity?
So, for me, living experience comes into it a lot. So opinion with this answer needs to be understood. For me, it's not about head count, it's about soul count. And the reason I say that is colour's really important in terms of the optics and what you see in the room, but culture is even more important. For me, diversity represents better futures. And I think the optimism that we have about future can often be lost when these types of situations and figures come into challenge. However, I also believe that a refresh was overdue from the energy we saw that was charged up around diversity from what happened in 2020. Everyone grew a social conscience in 2020. And the consistency behind that motivation was never going to last. And I'll talk about why consistency and motivation are really important. I'll talk about Black Lives Matter. But I'll come on to why consistency and motivation are really important things later on. But one of the other things that I want to kind of just touch on when I talk about what is diversity is also about innovation. And if we talk about a university setting, well, I'm going to slag off all universities here, so this is not directed at Sussex. And I work at Sussex, so I will be careful here.
You don't want to fire you.
That's fine. Universities like to promote themselves as hubs of innovation, and that's what they should be. The courses within the university, the individuals, the students within the university are all there to create innovation, to be innovative. But the structure and the system itself is so far from innovation, it's hypocritical. The archaic systems that are in place do not speak of innovation. So it's a good example, universities are a good example of how in business, in how wider society, there's a motivation and an appetite to be something, but the ingredients and the minerals are not always provided.
Thank you very much for that. Universities are, elephants. They're big tanks, very difficult to maneuver, right? And they're big tanks for, unfortunately, good reasons and bad reasons. They're big tanks because if they do not have this very rigid governance, it's very difficult to ensure that they can be created to a certain extent because they need to standardize education and to ensure that we deliver education. But I also think that the neoliberal model of university under which we are now, it's really constraining out even further. So you have a really fair point, and it's really refreshing to hear it. So what is diversity for you, Kevan?
When I think about diversity, for me it starts with considering different categories. So socioeconomic diversity, diversity of education, of culture, neurodivergence, people living with disabilities. They're all going to have unique ways of investigating and interacting with the world, and putting that into practice. We live in a capitalist system, and so when we look at diversity, we're also considering it in this quantitative sense of how can we leverage different approaches to make things more marketable, make more money, essentially. And so I think that's the first thing to be crystal clear about, is that we don't live in this world of goodwill that's social and with everyone looking to make sure everyone has an equitable opportunity, or that everyone has equal access to food and education. We live in a society that's driven by productivity. And so I look at diversity through the lens of productivity, and very much like Bud said, innovation and unique solutions. And so for me, it's being able to contribute to a system with a very focused objective of a quantitative output results, and configuring unique combinations of experiences, perspectives, and solutions in a way that will be as frictionless as possible, because if we're introducing friction into a system, it's not going to be efficient. And so if we're looking at diversity without first really considering it from a quantitative stance and thinking about how can we reduce friction within this system, then we're not being realistic about the capitalist system that we're a part of. And so for me, it's that quantitative way of coming up with unique solutions that help us to achieve that end goal of making more money.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's super interesting. And and this idea of friction is so important. Just want to give the audience a little bit of an insight on how this even idea of diversity started. So it really starts from the civil rights movements in the U.S. It starts from anti-racial movements in which in the 1960s in the U.S. they removed, this is how late it was, segregation of black and white people. And that's why it's incredibly inspiring for me to be sitting here with these two speakers, because we really need to acknowledge this very, very, very important point. And what happened when segregation was removed, they started something called affirmative action. Because what was the challenge in the US then? The challenge was actually to bring two communities together. I mean, seriously. As in everywhere. As in schools, streets, places to live, workplaces, buses, everywhere. This is how bad it was, and not very long ago, 70 years ago, right? It's so shameful that we have even to remind ourselves now of this very recent past. So we are really, in terms of human evolution, we are nanoseconds away from this moment in history. What happened then is that clearly we were coming from incredibly supremacist ideas then, and that's why I brought in supremacists very blatantly today. And there is no way to tiptoe around this. It's a fact. It is what it is, and it's very, 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 very alive today. And so what happened is then the only way this could be done was through affirmative action. What is affirmative action? Affirmative action actually is quotas, right? So, you are now a white school. Okay, from next year you have to have 30% of black people in the school. You are now a certain place with this and that, and this has to be respected, right? And if you look at the way that Trump is pushing back to diversity now, he's pushing back at this concept. Why is he pushing back at this concept? One of the things he says is like, you're a day higher, right? Remember there was this airplane that crashed on the sea, and the first thing he said, because the captain was a DI higher, right? So he's pushing back at this. So we are still stuck in there. Of course, not here, not us, but some people in power positions are still stuck in there. And so the question is that, and you've just said, Kevin, really interesting, right? That when we integrate different communities, we will create friction, and we do. And you just spoke very eloquently about that. So I'm going to ask a little bit more of I'm going to go down. We've gone abstract. I'm going to go down to the practical now. So how then do we do that? Do you have some examples that you think work?
I feel like we have a responsibility to acknowledge anytime we're looking to integrate, incorporate diverse communities, perspectives, or experiences, that there are humans on both sides, and we have to be aware of the needs of the people that we're looking to engage. And we also have to come at this from a perspective of leverage, because again, this is capitalism. And so if we are looking to be a part of a system that will change the reality of our community, and this other group doesn't necessarily need us, then it's going to be to our interest to be aware to the concerns and priorities of that group. And so we have to school ourselves up on how to communicate fluidly, or to understand the cultural norms, or how to not offend. I'm from America, and coming over here, it took me 7 years. I've been here for 19 years. The first 6 or 7 years, I consistently bumped my head because I came at it from a American perspective, and I was reminded time and time again, this is England. And eventually, I came to understand that, and it made it my real focus to understand the priorities and the cultural norms, and to learn to embrace them, because they exist and they work for people, and those people deserve to be respected and have their culture and their norms acknowledged. And so when it comes to removing friction, I believe that we have a responsibility, and it goes both ways. I think that people who are looking to bring on board unique perspectives, my TED Talk, that was a big part of it, was that anyone who's looking for innovation or growth and who wants to incorporate diverse perspectives as a means of doing so, they have to let go of their ego and be led by the norms and approaches of people from other perspectives. And so if you want to work together, then that starts off with dropping your ego and investing in the other party, and that goes both ways.
Great. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. There is to be an acknowledgement of the other as well. And I think that's part of this conversation. I know that there is this new series called Adolescence out. Yes, we watched this. And what adolescence is telling us is something super interesting, that the demonization of the other might actually lead to a backlash, which actually part of it we are seeing. And so I think that this idea of being joined in humanity is very, very important. Because when I started to teach diversity, I'm talking about maybe 10 years ago, it was very common when we were teaching diversity to speak about the wrong of the white man, right? What is the white man doing, and this and that. I clearly don't do this anymore now. But because we had created another horrible category in which we were ascribing all the poor white men, many of which don't have a problem. My husband is a white man, and when I was in investment banking at JP Morgan, he was doing the first feed for the baby when I was leaving to go to work. So the poor guy actually was incredibly supporting me and participating to my professional life. So this generalization of any category is really, really important, really difficult. And you also, it creates a backlash, right? So we now have young boys who come from white, maybe working class families, who are having a crisis of masculinity, like what is my role model, right? So that's also very, very interesting thought that just came about. So thank you so much. What about, but what about you in terms of, given that there is this friction, given this is such a delicate territory, where blunt observation create backlash, where there is friction, where there are competing truths sometimes. What works in practice, in your opinions, in your work? What have you seen works in practice in what you've done so far?
The clue's in the name of the consultancy, BOXLESS. My belief is that the boxes are harmful. They create this illusion of inclusion. So there's a vast amount of frameworks that exist that are advertised as the solution to create diversity. And again, universities and institutions are no stranger to those frameworks, badges, but ultimately, it could be said that they're quite performative. Right? So the first thing that I always recommend is internal reflection. Do you want to do this? Because this is work, right? And it's not just a personal question, it's a question of responsibility to the organisation. Do you want to do it? So if you don't want to do it and there's resentment, it's just not going to go anywhere. And this part about motivation and consistency starts to come in. But there's an analogy that I used this morning at the Better Business Network, which I'm going to share with you, which is the approach that I recommend to organisations. And this is an approach that I think works across all organisations, whether it's an educational institution, whether it's a business, large, SME, multinational. This is an approach that I think works. And the analogy is that you need to cook and not bake. So I like cooking at the weekend, and my style of cooking, like many people, is I taste as I go, and I ask other people to taste to get feedback and see where I'm at. The cooking's allowed to simmer for a bit, so there's some time to let things settle. I can add ingredients. I can put some salt. I can put some pepper. I can add as I go. Whereas when I bake, there's a strict set of guidelines. And if I don't put the right amount of baking powder in, or I don't leave it in the oven for long enough, I get either a burn or an uncooked, flat, sunken cake that just looks unattractive. And that's what frameworks do if you don't follow the process to a T. So the recommendation is wherever you are, whatever you're putting in place, if you're using a framework, fine. If you're being innovative and creating something that has complete authenticity, even better. But the ultimate message is cook, don't bake. If it needs more salt and garlic, put some more salt and garlic in that shit.
I will steal your cook metaphor, 300%. There is no way that metaphor is going to stay in this room. Thank you so much, that was very insightful. Right, so what are we doing for time? Can you, then we talked about frameworks and about cooking and about, it's true, right? I mean, I always ask them to apply this is what we do, right? We ask them to apply frameworks to, but we also ask them to be critical of frameworks. Very important. Don't get a good mark if you're not critical, if you had to give us few tips as individuals. So I'm interested now in your work as a filmmaker, because you work with people, right?
Yes.
And you film them. And when you film them, you have to extract, like you're like Socrates, right? So, Socrates say that, people have, the knowledge is inside the people, and the role of the philosopher is to get the knowledge out. So that's what to do, right? Your people have whatever they need inside, and you, through filmmaking, you make them emerge as individuals.
Yes.
Which means that you possibly have developed an incredibly sensitivity for the human. That's why you can do that, whatever human you have in front of you, right? Can you tell us a little bit about this process? Because it's very connected to diversity.
I'm a big fan of connection. I love communication. I love when you you have this sentiment or something that you want to express, and you're passionate about it. It means something to you, and you find just the right person. And you put it forward to them in a way, and they're like, "Yeah, I get that," and you build on it, and that's one of the best feelings that I know. That point of connection, and that's what I look to achieve in my work. And so, gosh, maybe a lot of it comes from my upbringing, being a Black American, growing up in hip hop culture, being in really challenging urban environments where there was a lot of violence. And back in America, there's this expression like, keep it real, you have to keep it real. And that means like being true to your core, resonant, like knowing what you stand for and being true to that. And that's your past, that's what like keeps you safe. Like wherever you go, you travel across America, you keep it real, and people, they'll see you. And so that is like the quintessence of the work that I do, is connecting with that with my clients. And when we like have this discovery of self, like we know what we stand for, we know the value that we bring to the table, and we express it, we share that. That's one of the thing. If there's nothing else that you take away, is becoming very familiar with your intrinsic value, what you stand for, and the value that you can add to any project or any team, and communicating that, letting it be known, establish it, make a cornerstone where people can go back to. Because I talked about leverage earlier, so you have like the leverage of media and coding. And so like that just means like I can like make a piece of content about something, and I can scale that. I can put it out, and it can influence lots of people, and it can add value, and it can add credibility. And so, or coding, like you can create an app, and then you can onboard lots of users, and now all of a sudden lots of people all over the place at once it's creating value and like bringing in revenue. So coding and media, that is like the lowest form of leverage. And then you have capital, you have money, you can like put that and leverage it, and you can use that to grow more wealth or more influence or whatever. And then you have people and communities, and that's something that Bud and I, we both have founded communities, and it's amazing like how people engage and respond to you, and there's like they realize that you have a community, and you can build a community through media, through getting your message, through clarifying your values and establishing that. And so when it comes to making yourself more valuable, then considering leverage and investing in making sure that your values are clear and transparent, and then finding the people or the groups who have similar values that resonate with that. And if they see it in you, that's going to dissolve a lot of barriers, a lot of friction. And so put in the work to understand your values, and then find your voice, your way of showcasing those values. You don't really have to worry about, are people looking for diverse talent? People are going to look for values and people who show that they can add to the bottom line of a company, just by that transparency. So it kind of comes down to, my work is all about finding the clarity and the values, and showcasing that in a way that 15 years from now, you may do different things, but you're still going to go back to that cornerstone and that core. You're going to be proud of the values that you stand by, that you're predicated on, and that will make you so marketable and open up so many doors, going forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. And I guess that's possibly your idea of human alchemy, or not?
Yeah, human alchemy for me. So this is a concept where you bring together like diverse perspectives for the purposes of innovation, and it all starts off with your values and recognizing the values in others. So that goes back to what I was saying before, is being like people who want innovative solutions have to learn to divine or unpack or understand how other people communicate. And so we're all going to showcase our values in different ways, some through cooking, dancing, photography and media, some through poetry. And so when you allow yourself to be led by people who share values, then you can collaborate with less friction on a common vision. And so human alchemy is all about clarifying your values, using your voice learning to understand the unique voices of other people from other places, because now you have more opportunities for collaborative, experiences, and then using those values and that unified voice to achieve a vision for progress and innovation.
Great, thank you so much. And this is super interesting because often we have students that come to our MBA. Well, it's super interesting from my personal journey perspective. I had a certain career. I came from a kind of an economic deprived background. My father was locked out of Palestine in 1967, could never go back. Then I was born in the 70s, so he was later on in life, I realized that I was born out of a traumatized father, which I didn't realize when I was a child, as you do. So, and we know what I'm talking about now, right? Because now the trauma is in front of everyone. And so and it takes time, right, to find who we are, to discover ourselves, to understand our value. It's easy said than done. So when I became the director of the MBA, and so when, then of course I became an investment banker, tried to make money, to move away from the difficulty in which I was. I created other problems because investment bank is not easy. And then finally I'm in a career where I'm aligned with myself. So I'm very familiar with this idea of alignment. But also, because I'm familiar with this career and idea of alignment, when people come to the MBA, I really want the MBA to be a place where people can find that alignment, and can reflect, and can oppose from the hype of work in a way. So it's almost like a holy space, this MBA, where people come in and they can reflect, and they can find who they are, and detach themselves also from some of the patterns in which we fall into, that then block us from being who we want to be to a certain extent. So in all this, I think that the holy mother of the entire thing is the lived experience of the individual, right? So the individual needs to accept and think about the lived experience, which of course sometimes we deny our lived experiences. Like, for example, I did not understand that my dad was a traumatized Palestinian immigrant. In fact, I would never call him an immigrant. Right? He went to study medicine in Italy. Then he didn't graduate. Of course he didn't graduate. I've always wondered, why did my father did not graduate? Hold on 1 second. When he was 26, he was locked out of his country forever. Of course it's traumatic, right? And I had completely hidden them from myself. So the importance of coming in touch with our lived experience, and it's so emotionally difficult sometimes. But this is such a big thing for you, right? The lived experience and the importance of the lived experience. And you always start with that every time you talk to me about diversity. So I'm thinking, do you want to tell us something from your perspective?
Yeah,
Is it good questions?
Yeah, sure. So I talked a little bit earlier about internal reflection. For me, that moment came in 2020. Lots of family and friends showing me the footage of the George Floyd murder, and me going, and? I've seen that a million times. And then the realization of oh my God, I've normalized the violence and murdering of people that look like me. The way that hit me was like a rocket. Boom. And has anyone ever seen the Dolls experiment? The Dolls experiment. Yeah, familiar with the Dolls experiment? All right, homework. YouTube the Dolls experiment. So the Dolls experiment shows how, from a very, very, very young age, regardless of our background, we are influenced by society on how we think about others and ourselves. And in this particular experiment, it's children of colour being asked questions about how they feel about themselves, and they predominantly identify themselves and other children that look like them as bad, evil, ugly. All right, young age. So the impact on society comes to it at such a young age. We talk about when does racism start? It starts at a very, very young age. That influence is coming from a very, very young age. So back to that penny drop moment for me in 2020, and understanding that I'd normalised a lot of this. You grow up in a white majority, seaside, city town. You have to navigate in a certain way with code switching and things become, that becomes normal. That becomes a normal way for you. So this penny drop moment for me was like, no, this is not right, this is not healthy. And I wouldn't say that it was on my mind then, but it's definitely on my mind now, and I use these two phrases a lot, which is, if not me, who? And I think that's really important, because I've spoken about motivation before, and you need a motivation. Don't wait for someone else to do it. You have that mentality in business, in innovation. Let me create something, let me go and propose something to become a founder like that. If not me, who? You need to keep that energy when we talk about responsibility in this area. And then the other one is, if not now, when? Life's short. Don't miss the opportunity, because you'll become an old person very quickly going, I wish I stood up for a little bit more. Yeah, I've made some money, yeah, I've had a good career, but I wish I stood up for my morals a little bit more. The opportunity's there, if not now, when? So for me, those two things came into my mind in 2020, and I'm born in a hospital up the road, I'm educated in this city, I live here, my family's grown up here, I have children here, I'm connected, I'm 10 toes down in the community. So for me, looking around, going, where's the support for black people during this moment of international spotlight over the racism that black people face? And for me, before, racism was this thing that was like a monolith that everybody experienced, regardless of their colour or background. But actually, the racism that black people experience is very different, because it's so much based on history, but also optics. Right? Because you can identify a black person straight away. Right? And looking around for a support outlet, system, network didn't exist. And the if not me, who comes in, the if not now, when comes in. So together with some wonderful people, we created a community interest company. It's called the Black Anti-Racism Community Organisation. We're going to be celebrating our 5th year this year, which is quite commemorative and emotional, really, because most CICs, if you look at the stats, don't last 5 years. Grassroots third sector is, can I swear? It's fucking hard. It's so hard. Business is hard, but third sector is really hard, because as a not-for-profit organisation, you're constantly going cap in hand, can I have some money, can you support this?
But also the emotional investment.
The emotional investment, it's hard, it's really hard. So to be here after 5 years, it's definitely going to be a celebration. I'm going to share a little bit about what we do, and then I'll finish, because I'll talk all day about this. We put on a carnival every year here in Brighton. Right? Hands up, who's familiar with Notting Hill Carnival? All right, cool. So we've got a little bit of understanding. Notting Hill Carnival was very much set up in demonstration, similar to Pride, about the treatment of black people, African Caribbean communities, particularly Caribbean communities in London. And the carnival, the Notting Hill Carnival, represents an opportunity for people in this country to celebrate their heritage, their history, their culture. It's somewhat commercialised now, because you've got 1.5 million people going through Notting Hill, drinking rum and blowing whistles and having a great time. But the essence of that carnival still remains in some fashion. Pride, on the other hand, is quite commercial. It's like 100 quid for a ticket, and they got Madonna come in, and like it doesn't retain its sense of activism and demonstration, whereas the carnival does. So we've brought carnival here. This will be the 5th year that we bring a carnival here. We take over St Answell's Gardens in Hove, and the carnival is the opportunity for a seaside town like Brighton to celebrate black culture. And what that does is it brings people along on the journey. So for people that don't understand about black culture, that may have some perceptions, that may have some disconnects, that may have some negative thoughts and conceptions about black people and black communities, it gives them an opportunity to come and learn about that culture in an environment that they can enjoy, in an environment that uses culture and art as a way to educate. So we talk about workshops, classrooms, unconscious bias, like, that's great, do your workshop, but like, how do we want to absorb information that will stick with us, that will change? It's through sharing our passion, sharing our joy. So we do that every year, and that has become innovative way, a consistent way, a motivating way to bring the community together to understand, okay, there are black and brown people in Brighton, in Greater Brighton. We want to learn about their culture. We want to create more connection, more community.
Thank you so much. Well, incredibly inspiring, and also I think that we have kind of expanded the concept of diversity, because what we tend to do in organizations is we think about the very famous categories, or all the very famous, boxes like the Islamophobia and this and that. Whilst effectively, real diversity is about connections of humans with humans and humans with different characteristics, and this beautiful empathy and understanding of each other's emotions and each other's words and each other's experiences. So I've learned so much actually. I did not know what the outcome of this was going to be, so I'm incredibly grateful. Do you have any, should we open up to the floor? Questions? Do you have questions? Oh, I forgot to tell you to have to prepare questions. Oh.
I have a question, which is, Bud, you talked about sort of it not working in some organisations. I wonder if you've got a sense of, forgetting industry sectors, just thinking about the types of culture where it's a nice fit, it's an easy way to work with them and make them more diverse. Are there
okay? So what is it?
A corporate culture that fit well with that desire to genuinely be more diverse?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's a good question. So your question is there a framework or not framework? Is there a model that exists around culture in organisations that we should aim for?
No, it's more, what are the similarities between different types of organisation? What's the common culture or common set of behaviours or attitudes that makes for a good
culture for diversity?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So what I'm going to talk about is the inverted pyramid. All right. So the traditional leadership model is the pyramid. You've got the leaders at the top. They tell the middle managers what to do. All the workers at the bottom. Off you go. Get on with it. Good businesses, good organisations use the inverted pyramid model, because all the diversity of ideas comes from that wide base at the bottom. All right. And the beauty of the inverted pyramid model is that by the time those ideas have got to the middle managers, the people that the leaders have assigned and recognised as being a cut-off, they get polished a little bit further, they get sanity checks, so that by the time they reach leadership for decision making, they've got the best ideas, right? So organisations that employ that kind of tactic or something similar are the ones that are a joy to work with. The ones that go, I know best, I've been doing business for 30 years, blah, blah, blah. They're the ones that's like, this is going to take a long time. And the fruit that you get from that base, when you flip the pyramid, it's magic. And I think those businesses that adopt that, not only do they get diversity of thought and ideas, but they get progress, because everyone then feels, my idea reached the top and it's being taken forward. It encourages people to want to give and share and contribute. So for me, it's organisations that use that type of model.
That's super interesting. In my PhD, I studied followership after working in all these big organizations for such a long time. Rather than studying leadership, I studied followership. So how do we get followers involved, and what is the value of this ability to pass up, knowledge and innovation conversation. So that's super interesting. Any more questions? Yes.
As something you said we spoke about at the beginning. So in 2020, when I joined my organization.
I don't know if it's gonna reach.
So in 2020, when I joined my organization, it was at the time of George Floyd's murder. And we were having these amazing conversations. Like, I work for a large American company, even our CEO is encouraging us all to engage material in these conversations. And then over time, particularly now, I'm seeing a complete shutdown in those conversations. Like, I'm head of the Pride Network, and now everything that we do is moderated. It needs to be submitted for approval by a central group in order for it to be published. Even we have a weekly coffee chat, and the invitations for that. need to be reviewed by what was previously called the DE&I organization and is now a colleague experience. Like it has been a complete backtrack over the last 5 months or so, and including the things that we are able to do. So a kind of question for anyone really on the panel: what are the ways to kind of speak up and fight against that kind of censorship, whilst also acknowledging that also the U.S. government is also could put sanctions on organizations that are actually doing it towards.
Just take that one first. So the first thing is that the level of threat is real. Right, real. So again, another bit of homework. Not even homework. If you want to look at a horror movie tonight, research the name Robbie Starbuck. Robbie Starbuck is somebody in the US who's actively going after businesses, organizations in the US and suing them for their diversity projects and initiatives and winning. That's the scary bit, and winning, right? Because all the kind of legal frameworks in different states in the US changes, and he's very clever at navigating that and being able to sue these organisations. So the level of threat is real, and that creates a lot of fear, right? The terminology, it's words, effectively it's still the same thing. Somebody that I speak to quite frequently that works at Amazon talks about how they were very much in the media for removing their DEI initiatives when actually they just changed the name and it ended, and it was an idea of let's expand this a little bit more, so they improved it if anything. So to use a Donald Trump phrase, fake news again is a real thing. But your question is about how do you speak up, how do you show up in those moments? And again, it was something I spoke about this morning earlier, which is this idea of internal reflection and being a parent. And the analogy I was using as a parent is that we have a sense of responsibility and privilege and pride about upbringing our children and making sure that they are stand-up citizens, that they have good morals and values. But when we look to our left and our right and our peers and our colleagues, even sometimes our friends and family, we don't necessarily hold them to that same account. So if not me, who? If not now, when? We all have to take a bit of responsibility, and that doesn't mean you need to get on social media and stand up and make a noise. It doesn't mean you need to quit your job and make a dramatic statement. It's the small acts, the butterfly effect, that will help. So that's something that I think everyone can do, is call in rather than call out. So if someone does something, it's like, okay, look, I'm going to call you in, and I'm going to have a conversation with you and say, look, that came across in a way that blah, 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 and it could be a little bit better. Rather than what we've been doing, I think, a lot over the last 5 years, is calling people out publicly and demoralising them and dehumanising them and making them feel like shit, right? So call in rather than call out, and just that kind of how can I be a parent to my peers? Yeah, that's the kind of thing.
So I'm sure that we have a lot of questions for Kevan too, but can I actually say, if we move to the drinks, and we are going to ask him question on a one-to-one basis. Please approach him. Question. Approach. Question.
I've got one
Don't
question
approach
for Kevan,
him.
though.
Oh gosh, yes, of course. Go.
So my question to Kevan, which is of real interest, as I said, I'm born and raised in Brighton, is as somebody that's come from the US where there's a different political climate, Brighton United, the idea of bringing together people from different backgrounds. Can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind that? Because I think for me and for other people in this room, that's a really interesting concept, that an American comes to somewhere like Brighton and goes, okay, I see how it's working here, why don't we try and do this? Can you share a little bit about that?
Brighton United, the community that I founded, all started when I had this experience of networking, struggled to build relationships. I'd go into some of the co-working spaces, networking events. People would look over me or through me, wouldn't engage, and it didn't make any sense, because we were in this super inclusive, progressive, liberal place, and And I felt like, people didn't want to know, and it just snap judgment associated low value with me. And so this is something that because I have a presence on LinkedIn and I get my clients from all over the world. And so I had no problem holding a mirror up to Brighton and sharing my experiences and saying, I don't believe this facade that you present to the world on being so inclusive. And the way that I shared it, there were other people who resonated with that message. And so there ended up being a lot of momentum and interest. People were like, okay, we hear you, we feel you. How can we be a part of the solution? And there has been a lot of people want to work together for a common solution. So and I don't know, maybe it's because I'm American, I had no trepidation with sharing my experiences. I built up credit because I'd shared my values over time, so people thought there was credibility in my appeal. I've been surprised at how willing people are to work together towards a solution, towards a common goal. I genuinely feel like it's fairly equal, the number of people who are hardcore racists and the people who are really inclusive-minded and supporters of diverse communities. I think it's probably fairly equivalent with the massive majority, like people in the middle who just want to get on with their day and aren't too bothered, but are willing to listen and be influenced by either group. And so I feel like we have a responsibility as ambassadors for our causes to polarize people and bring them to this collaborative side. And that's where clarifying both what we stand for and having a voice that resonates with others is a responsibility that we have to develop. And it's a huge opportunity for having people to join a cause that we believe in. And so it just all starts off with putting a message out in a way that other people can see themselves in it, and it sparks interest and selling an idea that we can be a part of something that's more connecting than divisive.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was really cool. And thank you for that question. It was really good. I didn't know about Brighton United, so great. Can I just say thank you so much to Kevan and Bud, and we'll continue the conversation after.
I hope it's been of value.